I just wanted to give a quick thank you for everyone that made this presentation possible, and we're really excited to share our findings. At the University of Washington and Friday Harbor Labs, we believe that knowing the history of our place and the context for our activities is an intellectual and ethical responsibility. We therefore like to begin our presentation with the following land and water acknowledgement statement. We feel that it is important to recognize the history of the first peoples of our land and waters and think critically about colonial ideologies and wrongdoings that altered their lives, wrongdoings that continue to impact the ability of Coast Salish peoples to manage land and water resources in accordance with cultural practices necessary to sustain the ecological health of the Salish Sea region. Finally, we ask you to join us as we seek to honor and understand our sense of place in these ancestral land and water environments. I guess we can go on to the next slide. I'm not sure. There we go. Again, my name is Kate Alhuson. I'm a second-year undergraduate marine biology student studying at the University of Washington. The work we're presenting here today was done at the Friday Harbor Seagrass Lab under the direction of Sandy Wiley Echeverria. Other members of our research team include Sean O'Connell, Erica Murdo, who is a University of Washington alumni, and Kathy Winnings from the San Juan Island Conservation District. The context for this study is the fact that eelgrass meadows are dwindling in size in the San Juan Islands. Our lab has been working on restoring by planting seeds harvested from flowering eelgrass head, and Adam Rogowski will be giving more context to this work in the next presentation. One of the areas that we have been harvesting from is the area shown on this map, 4th of July Beach, which is located in the San Juan Island National Historic Park on the southeastern end of San Juan Island, Washington. 4th of July Beach is a public beach, making it one of the few sites where eelgrass meadows do not fall on privately owned shoreland. Eelgrass is one of 72 marine species of flowering plants and is the most common in the San Juan Islands. They grow below the tide line and pollinate, set, and disperse seeds on a yearly basis. The population that we studied was intertidal, but they also grow subtidally. The main purpose of this research we're presenting here today was to determine how stable the population of eelgrass was at our site on 4th of July Beach. So to answer that question, we surveyed the vegetative coverage over 3 summers from 2021 to 2023, including the percent cover changes of eelgrass shoots, ova, and unvegetated plots. We selected 4th of July Beach as our sampling area because it is known to be home to a well-established eelgrass meadow with robust flowering activity. The geographical features of the beach and the surrounding areas also made it easily accessible for our surveyors to reach the areas of interest. Because the population is intertidal, surveys needed to be completed during low tide. We randomly selected 21 locations defined by specific GPS coordinates to sample in each of our 3 summers. And on the photo on the right, those blue markers indicate the approximate location of those 21 sampled sites. The locations spanned a 284-meter stretch of the shoreline and were located approximately 70 meters offshore. This is an aerial photo that was taken by Tom Kogan at the beginning of our study in 2021. It was taken in July, which is the same month that we sampled our quadrats. It shows the large intertidal flat present at 4th of July Beach, and here you can see the adult eelgrass shoots and ulva, as well as bare sand. So it goes to show how much fluctuation and variation is in the site. The yellow tape also shown in this photo is 100 meters long. So as you can infer, this photo only shows a subsample of the entire sampled site. And this was also taken at maximum low tide. So you can see that the water has gone out a significant ways. For our methods, again, we used 21 random sites at 4th of July Beach defined by specific geographical coordinates. These 21 sites were sampled each year from 2021 to 2023 during midsummer when flowering is at its peak. We constructed quarter-meter square quadrats to define the sampling locations, And at each of these locations, the surveyor would stand at the approximate GPS location, face the water, and drop the quadrat. He or she would then take a photo of the quadrat, similar to the one shown here on the right, and then lift the quadrat, turn 90 degrees to the right, and drop the quadrat again, and take the photo. This process was repeated in all 4 directions at the given GPS location until they were all photographed. We repeated this method for each of the 21 sampled sites. And all sampling was completed within a span of 1 to 2 days of each year, depending on the tides. And we classified the percent coverage of eelgrass shoots, ulva, and sand from each photo. Once we were done with that in the field, we went back to the labs and overlaid a 10 by 10 grid onto each photo in order to obtain a percent coverage of each. So what we found is that there is variation in stations from year to year, but overall the site average remained relatively constant. This first graph shows the percent coverage of eelgrass shoots in each of the 21 stations sampled, and at the far right, we've also included an average eelgrass coverage across all stations in each of the sampled years. As you can see, there's a great deal of variation both across the stations and within the stations, but overall the average remained relatively constant. You can see Site 2 had major growth in eelgrass shoots, whereas in Station 10, for example, in 2023, there was not as much coverage, but overall it averaged out to be relatively the same, and it goes to show how rhizome plants tend to expand and contract rather than staying consistent in just one location. This is a more visual representation of our averages, and though there is slight variation, we found that in all 3 categories, ulva, eelgrass shoots, and unvegetated coverage, the site average remained relatively constant across the 3 years as well. And again, this goes to show that rhizomes plants expand and contract over time, and they are not a static population and are constantly changing. Since 4th of July Beach will continue to be a harvesting site for restoration, we need to continue monitoring to determine if eelgrass shoot density is remaining stable within our study site. Some of the limitations that we encountered were accounting for tidal height variation during maximum biomass between years. The goal is to sample the site during peak eelgrass shoot biomass, but the timing of when we could conduct those surveys was often limited by how much water covered the stations. Another variable to consider in future monitoring is ensuring consistent image quality between years. Since this coverage was classified entirely based off the images, having good enough quality camera to distinguish the categories is important going forward. As we continue to conduct surveys, we're interested to see if we get more growth of eelgrass, algae, or encroaching unvegetated plots. Just to wrap up our presentation here, I've included a photo of Sandy and his grandson Nathan, just to kind of show that multiple generations are working to restore eelgrass at our beloved San Juan Islands, and especially at 4th of July Beach. And we're excited to kind of pass that torch down through the generations. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact myself or Sandy at our emails here, or visit us at the Seagrass Lab in Friday Harbor. Thank you. If there's any questions as well, I'm happy to answer them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Kate. Thanks a lot for that talk. You ended a little bit early, so we've got plenty of time for questions. If anyone would like to ask Kate a question, feel free to either unmute yourself or to write your question in the chat. I guess I have a question just to kick off for you, Kate. So you have some data over 3 years of sort of eelgrass distribution, and you see some variation in sort of the abundance of eelgrass. Sort of, this is a 2-part question. Do you have any either quantitative or qualitative data from previous years in terms of how that eelgrass population there in that area has been doing? Has that been declining? Has it been relatively stable? And then also, as the second part of the question, do you have or are you interested in taking some sort of water quality type data in terms of temperature, nutrients, things like that for environmental care conditions that may affect eelgrass quality over time?
So I guess to answer the first part of your question, I guess the quantitative data that we do have currently is only within that like 280-meter stretch of shoreland at 4th of July Beach. But I guess from just all of the time that I've spent there and just this past summer, I guess I would say that I can't say that I've been there in past summers. I've only spent one summer there myself, but from what I've noticed of people that have been returning consistently is that the site remains stable with its population, though we do see, again, the rhizome plant expands and contracts in different ways. And then as far as further testing going forward, I can't say that I'm 100% sure of what our plans are, but it would be definitely something interesting to consider.
Because I would imagine that with climate change, that one might expect to see changes in water quality and nutrient status of the and maybe even potential ocean acidification aspects that might affect eelgrass viability, either positively or negative with regards to ocean acidification.
Yeah, so not quite related to nutrient availability, I guess, but we do have plans to kind of explore the impacts of herbicide and pesticide use on shoreline of the San Juan Islands and within the county. So that's something that we'll be exploring going forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, I don't see any.
Sorry, Steve. I'll ask a question. I'm always good for a question.
I would expect so, Dr. Miller. Okay, awesome. Let's hear it.
So, Kate, I think that you sort of outlined that the goal is to sort of look for impacts of seed harvest, right? That's kind of the main orientation of this kind of monitoring and classification scheme.
So, our main goal was to determine if the population itself was stable, not necessarily the impact of seed harvest, though that does, I guess, kind of go hand in hand. It doesn't show a direct correlation to seed harvest.
Okay. And but this area is one in which I think I heard you say seeds are harvested for planting elsewhere.
Right.
Like when that patch is harvested, how much of the seed stock is taken typically, or do you have a sense for that?
I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I think it's approximately 10%. It's not like we're going in and taking all of the flowering heads. We try and be selective with what and where we're harvesting.
Okay. And so I guess, I mean, I was curious about whether the sort of relative stability that you've observed, at least over those 3 years, is due primarily to, shoots coming off the existing rootstock. Yeah. But since you're only taking 10% of seed, I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell that definitively, whether it's to what extent it's also just seed regeneration.
Yeah, I'm not sure from this data if we'd be able to determine whether it's seed or from the rhizome, but that's a good question and interesting to consider.
Fantastic. Well, at this point, I will cut it at this stage. And once again, you can use the chat to ask any further questions, Kate. And if something else occurs to you, we also do have time in the chat room a little bit later. So, Kate, thank you very much for the very cogent presentation.